A group of 3 men are missing, were the words Ranger Alex McKenzie heard as he barely crossed the threshold of the Highland Station at Talkeetna. The base chief looked worried. In Alaska in late October, the disappearance of climbers rarely ended well, especially when the route through Denali Pass was involved. A storm had hit the high mountain ranger station in Denali National Park. The first serious snowfall of the season made it clear. Winter had come to Alaska earlier than usual. The snow outside the window didn't stop, and the thermometer read -20. Alex was looking through the logbook when there was a knock on the station door. A frozen man in his 30s with a weathered face stood on the doorstep. "My name is Neil Harris. My sister Carol is in Robert Finch's band. They were supposed to be back yesterday." Alex frowned. Robert Finch, an experienced climber and guide, went out on the Denali Pass route with his client James Taylor and climber Carol Harris. This happened 10 days ago. Denali Pass is the most dangerous section on the way to the summit of McKinley. "They haven't been in touch for 3 days, Neil continued, holding a photo of his sister. "The park office says the rescue operation won't be launched until tomorrow morning, weather permitting." Alex looked out the window. The weather wouldn't permit it, and they both realized that. "Why Denali Pass?" asked Alex. "The end of October is not the time for such a route," Robert insisted. "This is his last attempt to return to big climbing after his injury. A magazine contract is at stake," Neil replied. Alex touched his jacket pocket where an old compass lay. 3 years ago, he had already lost a man on that pass, his partner, because of his own mistake. His superiors had decided to wait for the weather to improve, but it was clear to everyone that the climbers had almost no chance. Perhaps in the spring, when the snow melts, they will find the bodies. But for now, there was no point in risking the searchers. Alex did not sleep at night. The words of his ex-wife, said during the divorce, "You're never around when you're really needed," resounded in his head. He methodically checked his equipment, studied weather reports, looked at maps. At dawn, while the station was still asleep, Alex left a note on the duty officer's desk and loaded the equipment into the service snowmobile. He had a day's head start before the search officially began, and a little more, before the start of the strongest storm, which was already approaching the Alaska Range. Alex's snowmobile was making its way through the snow-covered Toklat Valley. Visibility was no more than 30 meters, enough to follow the route but too little for comfort. The temperature had dropped to -25. Alex checked the GPS navigator and slowed down. The climbing route of Finch's group started at 2,200 meters. From there, the climbers were to ascend to the base camp at 3,300 meters, and then, weather permitting, continue to the infamous Denali Pass at 5,500 meters. This route usually took 5-6 days round trip. Alex stopped the snowmobile at the foot of the first serious climb. The rest of the way was on foot. He took the radio out of the luggage compartment. "Talkeetna Base, over. This is McKenzie." The radio crackled before he heard the duty officer's voice. "McKenzie, what the hell? Where are you?" "Initiated a search operation. I have reached the entry point for the eastern route." "Are you out of your mind? The brass is pissed. Get back here now." "I'll be in touch every 2 hours. If I miss a session, launch an official search. Stand down." Alex switched off the radio without waiting for a reply. He knew he was breaking protocol, but this was his chance to correct a past mistake. He put on a rucksack with basic equipment, first aid kit, sleeping bag, food for 3 days, extra clothes, emergency beacon. He strapped a satellite phone, compass, torch, and knife to his belt. On my shoulder, I hung a carbine with mountaineering equipment. The first section of the climb went without problems. The snow was deep, but the snowshoes held well. The slope was not very steep yet. Alex walked slowly, taking measured breaths and scanning the terrain. Every 100 meters of ascent, he left visible orange markers to mark his way in case the weather deteriorated. After 3 hours of climbing, Alex reached an altitude of 2,950 meters. The blizzard had intensified and the wind began to howl between the rock ledges. Visibility dropped to 15 meters. Alex took a break, took out a flask with hot tea, and looked at the wrist altimeter. There were about 350 meters of ascent to the supposed base camp of the group. He switched on the radio for a scheduled communication session. Talkeetna Base, this is McKenzie. Reaching altitude 2950. Visibility is dropping. Continuing ascent to base campsite. Over. Roger, McKenzie. Weather Service reports the storm is intensifying. Go back, that's an order. I'll contact you in 2 hours. Stand down. Alex continued his ascent. Now the slope was steeper, and it was necessary to choose each step carefully. The wind threw snow in his face. The frost crept through the seams of his clothes. After another hour of hard climbing, Alex noticed an unusual shape ahead under a layer of snow. As he got closer, he realized that it was an abandoned tent, almost completely covered with snow. A half-filled rucksack was visible nearby. Alex dug it out and found inside personal belongings and documents in the name of James Taylor, one of the group members. As he looked around, he noticed tracks going higher up the slope. The tracks were partially covered with snow, but still distinguishable. Judging by the depth and size, 3 people had walked here about 2 days ago. Alex looked up at the sky. It was about 4 hours until dark, and the weather continued to deteriorate. He made a note with the coordinates of the find in the navigator and continued following the trail. The trail led upwards for about another kilometer before turning to the eastern wall. There, the tracks broke off at the entrance to a narrow crevice. Alex shined his torch inside. It was not just a crevice, but a natural ice cave about 15 meters deep. "Is anyone there?" Alex shouted, entering the cave. "Denali Park Rescue!" The torch's beam picked out 3 silhouettes from the darkness at the back of the cave. At first, no one answered. Then a woman's voice was heard. "Here! We're here!" Alex hurried towards them, bypassing the icy stalactites hanging from the ceiling. At the far wall, he saw 3 climbers. A woman, apparently Carol Harris, sat next to a man wrapped in a sleeping bag and several jackets. It was James Taylor. His face was pale, his lips blue. A third man, Robert Finch, stood against the opposite wall of the cave, holding a map. "Thank God," Carol exhaled. "James broke his leg 2 days ago. He's suffering from hypothermia and needs to be evacuated." Alex knelt down beside the injured man and checked his pulse. It was weak, but steady. Opening the first aid kit, he pulled out a thermal blanket and wrapped James with it over the sleeping bag. "There will be an evacuation, but not now," Alex said. "There's a big storm coming. No one will be able to get up here or send a helicopter for at least 2 days." "We can continue climbing," Robert suddenly said. "The peak is only a day away." Alex looked at him incredulously. "Climbing? Your comrade is in critical condition. The storm is starting, and you're talking about climbing?" "We can't miss this opportunity," Robert insisted. "I've already contacted the magazine. They're waiting for a story about the winter climb of Denali." "There won't be a winter climb," Alex cut him off. "Our task is to wait until the storm is over and evacuate the victim." He turned to Carol. "What about supplies?" She shook her head. "There's almost nothing left. Robert said we'd be up and down in no time. We didn't count on such a delay." "He didn't tell us he took less food to lighten the load," James added in a weak voice. "We only found out about it when we started cooking dinner on the second day." Alex looked at Robert, who turned away and pretended to study the cave wall. "I brought food and medicine," Alex said, taking off his rucksack. "It's enough for a couple of days if we save money. We need to look at James's leg." He carefully freed the injured leg of the victim. James grimaced at the pain. Even through the climber's tight trousers, he could see that the shin was unnaturally bent. "It's a fractured tibia," Alex said. "The bones haven't torn through the skin, that's good. But we need to make a proper splint." He pulled medical splints and painkillers from the first aid kit. "This will help until the evacuation, but in the hospital you'll need surgery." While Alex was tending to the injured, Robert paced nervously around the cave, occasionally looking outside. "Okay," Alex finally said. "I need to contact the base and let them know I found you. James needs to evacuate as soon as the weather permits." He switched on the radio but heard only the crackle of static. Then he tried the satellite phone. Same result. "The storm is getting worse," Alex said. "Communications are down. We'll have to wait out the storm here and hope for a signal tomorrow." Alex looked at James, at Carol, then looked at Robert. This was a critical situation, and they had a very difficult 24 hours ahead of them, possibly 2. And while James and Carol seemed to realize the seriousness of the situation, Robert's look said otherwise. It bothered Alex more than the impending storm. The wind outside the cave walls was a monotonous hum. The temperature hovered around -15, tolerable for moving, but dangerous for the exhausted James. Alex put out the gas burner and set out a walk of snow. "Fuel must be saved," he said. "Hot food once a day, the rest of the time, minimum water." Carol nodded, covering her brother with her jacket. Robert sat back, tapping nervously on the icy wall. "How long are we going to sit here?" he asked. "Until the storm subsides, 24 hours at least." "And if it doesn't die down, a week? Storms like this don't last weeks, usually 48 hours tops." Robert stood up and walked towards the exit, gazing out into the blizzard. "I could make it to the top and back in that time." Alex remained silent and busied himself with examining the cave. It was 15 meters deep and about 3 meters wide. At the far end there was a natural niche protected from drafts. "James needs to be moved there," Alex pointed out. Together with Carol, they moved the injured man. James groaned painfully with every movement. "How much food do you have left?" Alex asked. "A couple of energy bars and some dried fruit," Carol answered. Robert said, "We're taking a light load for the speedy ascent." "In October, on Denali? It's suicide even in perfect weather." He convinced us," James said quietly. "He said the forecast was perfect, that the magazine needed pictures of an unconventional climb, paid in advance." "My rucksack is designed for 3 days for one person," Alex said. "For 4 people in economy mode will be enough for a day and a half at most." The water boiled. Alex handed out bags of freeze-dried food to everyone. "James needs more," he added. "He's losing a lot of energy due to the injury and the cold." After dinner, Alex tried again to contact the base. Neither the radio nor the satellite phone worked because of the storm. "How serious is it?" Carol asked. "Pretty serious," Alex answered honestly. "If I hadn't found you, the chances would have been minimal. They're higher now, but everything depends on the weather and our actions." "Does the base know where to look?" Carol asked. "A rough direction. I left a note and the coordinates. As soon as the storm subsides, they'll start searching." "If we're still here by then," Robert intervened. "I suggest we don't wait for death. We need to keep moving." "Where? Into the storm? In -30 and 100 kilometers of wind?" "To the top. We're almost there." "You're 1,500 meters from the summit, with an injured comrade, no food, in the middle of a storm. It's not almost there. It's almost to the grave. James will stay here. Carol and I will go up and come back." "No," Carol said firmly. "I'm not leaving James." "Fine, then I'll go alone." Robert headed for his rucksack. Alex blocked his way. "Nobody's going anywhere. We're all staying here." "Don't tell me what to do," Robert snapped. "I am the leader of this expedition." "The expedition was over when I found you. This is a rescue mission now, and I'm in charge." Robert tried to get around Alex. He got in the way again. "You don't understand." Robert's voice became pleading. "This is my last chance. No one has taken me on any serious climb since my injury. This contract is all I have left. Your contract isn't worth 3 lives." "I knew you wouldn't understand." Robert shoved Alex sharply and lunged for the backpack. Alex staggered but held his ground and grabbed Robert by his jacket. He turned round and punched Alex in the face. A struggle ensued in the cramped space of the cave. "Stop it!" Carol shouted. "You're crazy!" Alex intercepted Robert's arm, pawed it, and pinned him against the wall. "Calm down. Think of your mates. They knew what they were getting into. No one promised a walk in the park. Why did you take so little food? Why didn't you tell them? The extra weight would have slowed us down." "I was counting on a quick climb." Alex let go of him and stepped back, staying alert. "You're not leaving here until the storm is over. That's out of the question." Robert looked at him hatefully, but he didn't resist any longer. He sat down against the opposite wall, defiantly turning away from the group. Alex wiped the blood from his lip and sat down next to James. The situation reminded him of the events of 3 years ago. Back then, he'd been on Denali with his partner Mike, conducting a rescue mission. Mike had insisted on splitting up and covering a larger area. Alex, as the senior, agreed, although protocol did not recommend it. The weather took a sharp turn for the worse. Mike did not make contact. Alex tried to find him without success. The body was not discovered until spring. "You're never around when you're really needed," his wife said before the divorce. She wasn't just referring to work, but also to the fact that he wasn't there for Mike when he needed him. "Is everything all right?" Carol asked quietly. "Yeah," Alex lied. "Just assessing the situation." It was almost 7 in the evening. It was getting dark outside, and the storm was getting worse. "We need to organize a watch," Alex said. "Someone has to keep an eye on James and keep the heat on. I'll take the first shift, then you." He nodded to Carol. "Robert will have to be on duty too." "I'm not doing anything," he cut him off. "I'd be halfway to the top by now if it weren't for you." "And we'd be halfway to the grave by now if it weren't for Alex," Carol replied sharply. Alex began to prepare for the night. The temperature was dropping as darkness fell. He pulled out an emergency thermal blanket for James, then took off his down jacket and laid it on top. "What about you?" James asked. "I've got thermal underwear and a fleece," Alex replied. "I'll keep moving. It'll keep me warm." He knew he was taking a risk by giving the jacket, but realized that without the extra warmth, James might not survive the night. "You should get some sleep too," Carol said. "I can take the first watch. I'll sleep later. Right now we need to monitor the situation." Alex feared that Robert might do something while the others were asleep. A man in desperation is capable of recklessness. Alex sat at the entrance, rubbing his arms and legs to keep warm. He stared into the raging darkness and clutched his dead partner's compass in his hand, as if it could show him the way through this storm, not just the meteorological one, but the one raging inside him. Alex woke up to the pain in his fingers. Without his down jacket, the cold was getting to his bones. Stretching his arms, he looked at the clock. 6:15 in the morning. Carol was dozing against the wall next to her brother. James slept restlessly, his breathing frequent, a sign of advanced hypothermia. Robert sat in his corner with his eyes closed. The storm hadn't stopped. It sounded stronger. Alex looked outside. The wind instantly burned his face. The snow was so dense that nothing could be seen within 2 meters. He covered the entrance with a snow block, leaving a ventilation slit. "How's it going in there?" Carol asked, opening her eyes. "The blizzard's still blowing. How's James?" "His fever's up. He'd been delirious during the night." Alex checked James's pulse, weak and frequent. His forehead is hot. Fever combined with frostbite was a dangerous sign. "We need to give him antibiotics," Alex said, pulling out the pills. "And try to keep him warm." "Is he dying?" Carol asked bluntly. "Not if we get out tonight." "But there's not much time." Robert opened his eyes. "I told you we should have gone yesterday." "Where? You'd have frozen to death in half an hour. I'd rather die on the way to the top than turn to ice here." "How about not dying at all?" Carol replied sharply. Alex switched on the radio. There was still only a crackle in the speaker. The satellite phone didn't work either. He handed out the last of the food packets, leaving himself a smaller portion. After that, only emergency chocolate and candy bars remained. "They'll be looking for us after the storm," Alex said. "I have an emergency beacon. As soon as the connection improves, I'll activate it." Morning turned today, but it was dark as twilight outside. The storm had been going on for over 24 hours. The temperature inside the cave stayed around -20. Alex tended to James, rubbing his limbs periodically. The fever didn't subside. Carol helped, but the fatigue and stress were taking their toll, and she was falling into a stupor more and more often. At some point, Alex noticed Robert standing at the exit again. "The wind seems to be dying down," the man said. Alex walked over. Indeed, the howling of the storm was not so deafening. He switched on the radio again. A faint voice came through the interference. "Talkeetna Base, anyone? Come in. Talkeetna Base, this is McKenzie. Come in." "McKenzie." Barely audible. Coordinates. "I've got a team. One of them is badly wounded. We're on the east slope in a cave at 3,500. Activating beacon." There was no response, but even that was enough. Communication was being reestablished. The storm was abating. Alex activated the emergency beacon. The device started flashing red LED, sending a signal with GPS coordinates. "Will they find us?" Carol asked. "Yes. The signal can be received up to 100 kilometers away. How long will it take? If the weather improves, the helicopter could be there in 2 or 3 hours. Or 2 or 3 days. Or never," Robert snorted. "Shut up," Carol said tiredly. Alex looked outside. The blizzard was abating. Visibility had increased to a few dozen meters. The gaps between the clouds told that the storm was receding. They spent the next 2 hours waiting in suspense. James would regain consciousness and then pass out again. Around 11, Alex heard the rumble of an engine. At first, he thought it was a hallucination, but the sound became clearer. "Helicopter!" he shouted. "They found us!" Carol jumped up, a glint of hope in her eyes. Even Robert looked up. Alex pulled out a bright orange-colored smoke bomb. "I'll set off the signal. Prepare James for transport." He stepped out of the cave. A helicopter with the National Park Service emblem was circling a couple of kilometers away, trying to locate the source of the beacon signal. Alex activated the checker and placed it in an open area. Orange smoke rose upwards, clearly visible against the snow. He started waving his arms around. The helicopter noticed the signal and changed direction. A few minutes later, it hovered 50 meters from the cave. The place was too narrow to land, so 2 rescuers with stretchers were lowered down. "Alex!" shouted one of them. "Are you all right?" It was Dave Collins, his colleague. "I'm fine. There are 3 in the cave, 1 with a fracture and severe hypothermia. Condition is critical." Rescuers quickly entered the cave and began preparing James for transport. "We'll evacuate the injured man and the woman first," Dave commanded. "Then we'll come back for you." "I'm in charge here," Robert intervened. "I need to be evacuated first." "Protocol prioritizes the condition of the casualties," Dave said. James and Carol were prepared for evacuation. Carol gave Alex a hug before they left. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved us." They were hoisted aboard a helicopter that headed straight for Fairbanks. "The helicopter will take them to the hospital," Dave said. "Then it'll come back for you. It'll take about an hour." "What happened to your jacket?" he asked, noticing that Alex was wearing only a fleece. "Gave it to the victim." "You're stubborn. Here, take it." Dave held out a spare jacket. "You're on the verge of hypothermia yourself." The helicopter returned an hour later. Dave contacted the pilot and learned that James and Carol had been successfully transported to the hospital. On the way back, Alex was silent, looking at the mountain ranges. Somewhere out there, 3 years ago, he had lost his partner, a mistake that couldn't be undone. But today, he had managed to save 3 lives. Maybe it was not redemption, but a step towards reconciliation with himself. When he arrived at the base, he had a serious conversation with his superiors. "You broke every protocol," said the park supervisor, "but you saved those people. There will be an internal affairs investigation." "I'm prepared for the consequences," Alex replied. After filling out the reports, he was sent to Fairbanks Hospital. He was diagnosed with hypothermia and placed in the room next to the one where James was treated. "The surgery went well," the nurse said. "Your climber's life is out of danger." "He's not my climber," Alex smiled. "But I'm glad." As he fell asleep under the influence of medication, he thought about his partner's compass. Maybe it had pointed the right way, not to the top of the mountain, but to what really mattered. Alex reread the letter that had arrived a week ago. "James has fully recovered from his surgery. The doctors say he will be able to walk without crutches by spring. We both realize that if it hadn't been for you, things could have ended very differently. Robert has stopped mountaineering. I recently learned that he's taken a job as an instructor at a ski school in Colorado. Maybe that's a good thing. As for me, the experience changed a lot of things. Perhaps I will return to the mountains someday, but definitely not on Denali and not in October. With endless gratitude, Carol Harris." Alex folded the letter and tucked it away in his breast pocket. Today was the first time he'd been out on full patrol since the incident. A command investigation had resulted in a reprimand for breach of protocol, resulting in the saving of human life. His superiors understood the situation as well as he did. The rucksack was packed, the snowmobile was fueled. Alex took Mike's compass out of his pocket, as he did before every time he went out on the trail. It used to be a ritual of guilt and a reminder of a mistake. Now it was something else. Before leaving, Alex called his ex-wife for the first time in months. The conversation was short but not tense. She agreed to let the kids spend part of the Christmas holidays with him. He walked out of the base building, got on his snowmobile, and started the engine. There was a long day of patrolling ahead, and someone might need help again. Friends, you've just heard the story of Ranger Alex McKenzie and his rescue mission in the rugged Denali Mountains. Is the pursuit of glory always worth a man's life? What's more important, conquering the summit or saving those around you? For Alex, the answer became obvious. And the mountains, they're not going anywhere. They're eternal in their rugged grandeur. And that's why true Alaskan heroes choose not to conquer the heights at any cost, but to preserve what is truly priceless. What do you think about that choice? And what national park stories would you like to hear next? Write in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like ranger stories.